Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training, we're going to be going over niching and pricing your program. It's going to be a foundational training for you to understand before you actually go ahead and launch your version 1.0 of your remote wellness practice. Of course, inside of this training, we are continuing our theme of launching your version 1.0 of your remote wellness practice, as well as going through the final trainings in order to get your remote wellness certification. Of course, as always, we do also have the training outline available for you. Make sure you go ahead and use the show outline version of that when you actually look at the guide, because that is going to be very helpful for you. And with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the actual training and talk about what this training is all about. And so inside of this training, we are going to be breaking down two foundational topics when it comes to your transformation program, as well as your remote wellness practice as a whole. And those two topics are going to be number one, niching, and then number two is all going to be about pricing. So we're going to be talking about niching down your program, as well as how to be able to price your version 1.0 of your program for your remote wellness practice. Now, of course, the theme that you're going to notice as we are continuing through this module, and as we go ahead and start putting the final touches on the version 1.0 of your entire program, is that what we're doing here at the final tail end of your certification, really your certification as a whole, is really focusing on the product aspect of things right here, right? And the reason for that being is because this is the most difficult part for beginners when getting started out is, hey, what do I sell? How do I deliver? What does all of that look like? How do I actually provide value? Because if you remember in that visual that we've always had, is that you first need to figure out, how am I going to provide value? What does that look like? And then the second piece of that is, how do I actually monetize? How do I actually go ahead and charge for the value that I'm going to be delivering? Because the thing is that money, as you're going to learn in the game of money in an upcoming module, is that money really is just an intrinsic form of value. And so if you want to be able to receive money, aka money from other people, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to provide value. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about your product right here, is all about answering that question in the certification. Okay, but what is it that I actually sell? How is it that I actually provide value? And so inside of this training, when we talk about niching and pricing your program, that's what we're talking about. We're going ahead and finalizing all of the smaller details, so that way once you actually get to focus on the marketing and the sales, then this product side is kind of just taken care of. You're able to go ahead and just get people into your product, and kind of like a container, you know that, okay, you know what, I can focus on marketing and sales. I have conviction and belief in my marketing and sales because I know that I have this product that I'm going to be able to provide value for. Okay, so that's just a reminder of why what it is that we are talking about inside of this training is so important. Now, the other point I want to go ahead and talk to you about before we get into talking about what niching actually is and how a niche actually works and market positioning and all of that, is I want to go ahead and talk to you about the theme of this training. So what you're going to notice is that a lot of the trainings inside of this module do have a theme. And so the theme of this specific training is all going to be about just introducing you to the foundational topics related to income and business. And so what you're going to hear over and over again inside of this particular training is that, hey, don't worry, we're going to talk more about this later. And why is that the reason? The reason that is the case is because, like we've talked about many times before, is that the certification here is really just to go ahead and teach you how to be able to provide that value. And then these other topics related to income and business, that's where we go ahead and talk about that in phase 2 when we actually get into the income and business training. Okay. Now, some of the things that are going to come up as questions that some students are going to have, and quite frankly, especially those students who wear the failure uniform and don't really understand what is going on here in terms of how this entire curriculum is structured, will go ahead and say, hey, you know, Coach Yasin, you're making a big deal out of this, all of these long trainings, this is just taking so much time. Why is it taking so much time, right? I just want to go ahead and get to making $100,000 a year. I just want to make $300,000 a year. Like, why is it taking that much time? And so my question to those students who do wear the failure uniform is like, okay, well, how much do you know about operations and tech setup? How much do you know about being able to get TCK set up? How much do you know about advertising, sales, customer success, market positioning and offers? How much do you know about niching and pricing, right? And so overall, how much do you know about the topics that are related to the game of money and business, right? If we went ahead and gave you a blank Google document and told you, hey, just start writing, how long would it be until you actually ran out of things to talk about, of things to actually put on that document? document when it comes to these topics, when it comes to the topics related to the game of money and business, right? Have you ever properly sat down and studied the game of business and money properly before? Because becoming good at the game of money and business is just like getting good at any other subject. The truth is that it requires study. And so even though many people historically have made the game of money and business this magical, mystical, mojo jojo kind of dark box that, is so mysterious, the truth is that it's just like any other occupation, right? And so it's exactly the same way that if you were to go out there and get a bachelor's degree or any degree at all, maybe an associate's degree or something like that, right? And would you ever go to your college professor in your first freshman year and say, hey, Mr. College Professor, hey, Chemistry 101, hey, XYZ 101, Communications 101, this is taking too long. I need to hurry up and get through my 4-year degree. Can we hurry this up so that way I can go ahead and make money already, right? Or was it that you understood that there was an entire process that you had to go through in order to actually go ahead and graduate with your bachelor's degree or your associate's degree or your master's degree, right? There was a process that you had to do. You couldn't just go ahead and take, let's say, like 24, 36, 48 credit hours inside of a semester. You couldn't do that, right? You couldn't go out there and do all of that. You understood that there was a process in order for you to be able to graduate and then get a job with your degree. And so visually, this is what it looks like, right? The same way that a medical doctor, physician who wants to go out there and make $300,000 a year, they have to go and spend so many years studying things like anatomy and biochemistry and medical ethics and physiology and pathology and pharmacology, right? In fact, they have to spend the first 8 years of their career just studying and not making any income, right? When we talk about the undergrad degree and the medical school degree, right? And so what they have to do is they end up saying, you know what, I got to go out there and find maybe a side job so that way I can make it through medical school. And then even then, when they graduate from medical school, they have this residency, right? Even then, they're not making $300,000 a year. $300,000 a year is typically what somebody who has a specialization, somebody who goes through a fellowship, actually is able to make after an additional 2 to 4 years of specialization, which during that time, they're either making little to no income as well. And so what's happening is that they're studying for 4 to 6 hours per day for 10 plus years in order to actually become a physician that's able to make $300,000 a year. Now, this is the thing that most people don't understand, is that you don't become a medical doctor and a physician in order to make money, right? You become a medical doctor physician in order to be able to help people, and you have a reason why you're doing it, right? But the end result is that if you are doing this for the sake of money, the end result is that as a medical doctor and as a physician, you're not going to have the freedom and the flexibility. Yes, you're helping people, but you're going to be caged to the hospital. It's just not the game of money that you are spending your time studying, right? However, on the online business owner side of things, right? If somebody's out there saying, you know what, I want to go ahead and exclusively work on figuring out how to provide value and help people by studying the game of money and business. Well, in the same way that the medical doctor and the physician has to study topics, has to study subjects, in the same way in the game of money and business, there are topics like advertising, copywriting, sales, product development, operations, customer success, right? And so the thing is that when you're spending the time studying, what's happening is that maybe in the first year when you're learning the skills, when you're learning these subjects, maybe there might be little to no income because you're just getting exposed to this entire subject matter, right? This entire skill set is completely new to you, right? And then after that, you might have another 2 to 3 years of really refining those skills that you were going ahead and learning. And during that time, you're maybe making $10,000 a month, which is pretty good, right? And then what you're doing is that you're learning these timeless skills that are going to allow you to be able to generate an income in any economy. And the end result is that you have complete freedom and flexibility while you are also still able to go ahead and help people and provide value. And so it's the exact same process. It's just that unfortunately in today's world and in today's society, they just don't understand it that way. They think that they want to go ahead and make money quick and they want to go ahead and maybe in make money now mode when they don't understand that this is an occupation in which you need to be able to study how the game actually works. And your ability to be able to provide value and your ability to monetize that value, two things, is based off of whether or not you have the skills related to these subjects. And so depending on how good of a doctor you're going to be is based on how well you actually know those topics. And so the thing about all of this is that if you want to be able to have an income earning potential of a medical doctor, and quite frankly, more than that, because of the fact that when you're studying the game of money and business exclusively, effectively, you don't have an income ceiling. Versus a medical doctor and a physician, if they're working inside of a hospital, they are just pretty much an employee, right? They have an income cap on how much they can make. But when you actually learn how to be able to provide value and you learn how to be able to monetize that value, when you actually learn the skills around that, there is no income cap, right? And then here's the thing on top of that, is that you want to be able to make the earning potential of a medical doctor, if not more, plus you want to be able to have the freedom and the flexibility to live the life that you want and to be able to work on what it is that you want to be able to work on, which is a luxury in and of itself that so few people in the world have. My question to those students who wear the failure uniform is this: why do you not think that you are going to have to dedicate yourself in studying just as much? In the same way that somebody's trying to become a medical doctor or physician in order to make $300,000 a year, in order to be somebody who is good at their craft, society is not going to reward that person unless they are actually providing value in that way. So why is it that the failure uniform students think that they are not going to have to dedicate themselves and actually study and put in the work in order to get to that point? Why do those students think that they can make as much as a doctor when they only study 6 months in a business opportunity or learn how to be able to play the game of money and business? They think, you know what, I'm just going to study for 6 months and boom, I should be able to make as much as a doctor. And on top of that, have the ability that not even doctors have, which is have the freedom and the flexibility to live the life that I want to live? How does that make any sense, right? And so here's the bottom line, is that the truth is that there is going to be a track in which it does require studying the most important topics when it comes to making an income online. You got to study the game of money. You got to study the game of sales. You got to study the game of marketing, right? You got to study the game of operations. You got to understand the tax game and the accounting game and the finance game, right? You got to be able to learn how to be able to scale. All of these are things, right? But guess what? This is a better track than the other track that exists right now that is out there, right? Where most people go $70,000 plus in debt for the rest of their life only to come out making $70,000 a year. And then when you go ahead and adjust that for their cost of living, they don't have any money left over in order to actually even pay for that debt, right? And this is not something I just made up, right? Average student loan debt, you can look it up. The average student loan debt is substantial. And so this is the response to those students who wear the failure uniform. And this is going to be the theme that you're going to see over and over and over again as you get introduced to these business topics, because this other track that we're talking about, this other track that you are on right now, it's going to teach you the skills and provide you the tools to be able to put food on the table for you and your family for the rest of your life, and it's going to serve you for the rest of your life. This is going to be something that no economy, no government, no country can take away from you, because it's your skill set, right? It's an investment in yourself, in the studying of the game of money and business. And so isn't this other track just so much better? So yes, there are going to be other topics that you are going to need to study in order to be able to make $100,000 a year in an online income in your remote wellness practice. And guess what? We're going to be able to be there for you every step of the way and guide you along that way. And then the thing is, once you learn those foundational skills, once you can open up a Google document and say, hey, go ahead and talk to us about what you know about customer success. Go ahead and talk to us about what you know about copywriting. Go ahead and talk to us about what you know about advertising. And you're like, boom, you know what? I know this stuff. When you have those skills in your toolbox, which I promise you, remember, skill equals knowledge times reps. You get the knowledge, you put in the reps, you get the skill. When you have that skill, the outcome is unlimited earning potential, okay? And so this is the theme that I wanted to go ahead and really, really drive home, is that we're going to go ahead and say, hey, don't worry, this is an introduction, and we're going to go ahead and expand on it later. And this is the reason why we're going to be expanding on it later. So that way you can become an absolute master of these topics and have no income ceiling. And then on top of that, be able to also have the freedom and the flexibility while also helping other people and live an amazing life. And the path to that is by learning these skill sets. And so with that being said, and with that introduction, what we're going to go ahead and do is now really go ahead and talk about the main topic of this entire training, which is going to be niching as well as pricing your program. So let's go ahead and talk about niching your program first, so that way you understand exactly what that is and how that is going to play a part in you being successful long term. Okay, so the first question is, well, what is niching? So niching, or niching down, is when we actually focus all of our efforts yours on a specific group of people, aka a niche, or as some people call it, a niche, right? Either way, niche, doesn't matter, right? Now, niching in the game of business and money is also known as market positioning or market selection, okay? Those are the other terms that this entire topic is kind of referring to. Now, we actually touched on this topic very briefly in a previous module when we talked about the ideal client. We talked about going ahead and putting your ideal client together. That was the introductory phases that we talked about in terms of starting to get your mind thinking about what is the market positioning, what is the specific group of people that you would actually like to help. And we're going to go ahead and expand on it and talk about that even more right now. And so visually, what this entire process looks like and what this entire concept really looks like is that what happens is that you have the entire population, right? You can imagine mass market is what we call it. You have the entire population of, at this point, not only the country, but really the entire world, because when you run an online business, the entire world is open to you. But let's just say hypothetically English speaking audience, right? United States, Canada, UK, that would be, let's say, mass market entire population. And then what you have within that is your market position, your niche, the group of people that you are helping specifically, and how that market position is different than, let's say, other competitors and what it is that they are offering, right? And so this is what it looks like visually when we talk about market positioning and niching. And so essentially what we're talking about is anybody who shares a similar desired situation, right? Somebody's like, you know what? I want to get here, right? And I am this type of person. All of these types of people can be grouped together in a niche. And so kind of something that you're going to learn later on in the money and income trainings, you can have something that is a niche statement or a market statement, which is, hey, I help XYZ niche, right, to get to this desired situation by, and then you insert what's called a unique mechanism, the specific proprietary thing that you have that makes you different than everyone else. And so you have multiple points of differentiation here. You're able to go ahead and have, you know what, I help only these types of people, and I help them get to this specific situation, and I do it through this specific process. And so what you're going to start to notice is that this entire thing, what it allows you to do is it allows you to be able to set yourself apart and stand out from the rest of the noise that exists within the mass market, right? Now, the big question that you might have after even hearing about this concept is, okay, Coach Yasin, right now we're talking about our version 1.0 launch for our remote wellness practice. And so does this apply to us right now? Because the question that we got to ask ourselves is, when do we actually go ahead and niche down? When should this be a topic and a point of conversation for us, right? Do I do this for my version 1.0 launch for my remote wellness practice? And first thing, I want to go ahead and say that that's a phenomenal question, because this is a very strategic question that we want to go ahead and answer right now. And the answer to this question is going to change and evolve based off of the income level that you are looking to get to, right? So you can go ahead and say, you know what, we're starting out, we're going to have our first 3 to 5 clients, students, or customers. And then after that, you say, you know what, we want to go ahead and get to consistent $10,000 a month. And then after that, we want to go ahead and scale past that. And so what's going to happen is that when you are first starting out, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and work with anyone and everyone that you can and who is willing to work with you. And what you're going to do is you're going to do this in your remote wellness practice for the first 3 to 5 clients or students, maybe even the first 5 to 10 students, okay? However, what you're going to be doing during this time that you are just starting out is that in the back of your mind, you're starting to refine and think and collect data around the people that you want to actually work with long term, okay? Now, the big thing that you want to know is that you don't want to worry about trying to work with only that specific niche in the beginning, because the biggest thing that's going to be difficult for you as a beginner is getting that momentum going. And so if you say, you know what, I only work with this type of person, then you're going ahead and starving yourself from the repetition and the experience that you so desperately need in the beginning, okay? And then what happens is that what you're doing is you're working with as many people as possible, you're getting in as many reps as possible, okay? And then what's going to happen is that who you want to work with specifically is going to naturally start to emerge once you actually start helping people get results. And so from the very start, what you're going to do is you're just going to go ahead and get reps with anyone who's willing to work with you. And then the switch that's going to happen is that then when it's time for you to go ahead and say, you know what, it's time to go ahead and get to $10,000 a month consistently. I need to get to $100,000 a year, okay? What's going to happen is that now that you've gotten that practice out of your system, right, because you're working with everyone, you got the reps in, then you can start to get hyper focused on the niche because you have that momentum, right? Because of the fact that it's easier to steer a moving car. And so now, after hearing that, the question that you might have is, okay, well, why is it important to go ahead and get hyper focused on the niche once you're actually looking to get to $10,000 a month consistently? And the reason why that is so important is because when you are going ahead and starting out as a beginner, if you go ahead and go mass market, what's going to happen is that it's very hard for you to actually get traction because of the fact that you are not yet skilled in your ability to market, sell, and build a product that is so great, that is so unique, and that is so exceptional that is going to stand out in the marketplace, right? And so if you were to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and help everybody, then what's going to happen is that it's going to be difficult for you to stand out once you decide that you want to get to the point where you are trying to go ahead and scale to $10,000 a month consistently, right? Of course, in the beginning, you're helping everybody out because you're just kind of dabbling, you're getting reps and you're getting practice. But then now when it's time to take it seriously, you can't really go mass market, right? You're just not skilled yet enough in order to stand out from all of the other bigger players in this space, right? They are so much better at marketing, at selling, at building a product than you are. And if you go ahead and try to go mass market when you are not yet that skilled, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to be vanilla and you're going to go ahead and get swallowed up by all of those bigger players who are just so much more skilled and better than you are right now. And so niching down and market positioning is the way and is the secret way for a beginner to really be able to go ahead and stand out. And it's so much easier for you to be able to stand out in a smaller market rather than trying to stand out to everyone who's mass market and the entire population, right? Now, here's the big thing about this. And this is kind of like the big thing that beginners get stuck in their head with is that, does that mean that I have to love my niche, that I'm going to go ahead and serve only this niche for the rest of my life? No, this is actually a fallacy that comes from people who are stuck thinking in employee mode, because employees think, you know what, hey, this is going to be the same job I'm going to have for the rest of my life, XYZ. In fact, the employees that approach it with an entrepreneurial mindset and say, you know what, I'm going to have this job for 2 years, and then after that, I'm going to be able to go ahead and ladder my way up to the next job, and I'm going to be able to go ahead and get better and better and better. Those are the ones that end up being successful. All of the employees that think, oh, you know, I got to find the job that I'm going to be at for the rest of my life, they're the ones who always struggle, right? And so the truth is that when it comes to the game of money, all you need to be focusing on when you get to that point, remember, this is only when you get to that point. Right now, when you're starting out, you're going ahead and saying, I'm going to work with anybody and everybody. But when you get to that point where it is time for you to be able to niche down and choose market positioning, when it comes to the game of money, you need to have a niche that is going to go ahead and help you get started, so that way you can learn the skills needed to then be able to level up and focus on another niche. I cannot tell you how important this concept is strategically for you to be able to understand. And this is exactly what happened to us and throughout our career as well. Let me go ahead and give you an introduction of that, right? And just as an example, when we first started out way back when, what happened was that we said, you know what? The easiest, lowest hanging fruit for us to go ahead and get started with is for us to be able to go ahead and help women over the age of 40 lose weight, because the weight loss market is so predominantly based on that group of people, okay? Now, do you think that we were in love with serving that niche? Do you think that we were going to go ahead and say, you know, we're going to serve that niche for the rest of our lives? No, of course not, right? We were literally mainly a organization of men who were like, you know what? We don't know what we're going to do. The easiest niche for us to be able to go ahead and help is women over the age of 40 lose weight. And then obviously we had coaches who were women, XYZ, right? And what we did was we started with that low hanging fruit because we knew that we could get started there. And then we grew that to $100,000 a year. And then from there, we were able to go ahead and expand specifically within the domain of health. And we said, okay, now, you know what? We are now more skilled to be able to help people in general be able to reduce stress and live a life of wellness. But you can already see that that is a lot more difficult to be able to quote unquote sell and market, because we were not that good yet at those skills. But then once we actually refined those skills at this stage, then we went ahead and grew over to this niche, and we were able to go ahead and grow that to $50,000 a month, which is about $600,000 a year. And so you can see here, as our skills got better, we were able to go ahead and expand and expand and expand. And then from there, we said, you know what? We're not really as passionate about this only because our skills have outgrown this. We can literally do this in our sleep now. What we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and change verticals, and we're going to go from the health space, and we're now going to go ahead and get into the wealth space. And so what we did is we just literally helped people do exactly what it is that we did over here. So we started helping coaches and personal trainers grow their online businesses to $50,000 a month, which is about $600,000 a year. And And why did we know how to do that? Why did we have the skills to do that? Why did we have the experience, the knowledge times reps to be able to do that? Because of the fact that we had done it and we could do it in our sleep. And so at that point, we were then able to grow ahead, and we were able to grow that to $1 million a year plus. And so you can see it's kind of like a ladder, right? It's not like you're sticking with that niche forever. You need to have a niche once you get to that point that is going to allow you to be able to get into the game of money and business, for you to be able to go ahead and get you into the game that's going to allow you to learn the skills, which will then allow you to be able to level up. And so many people say, oh, you know what? I only want to help this group of people. But guess what? Maybe your skills aren't to that level. And so you got to start somewhere else. And then once we actually mastered that, we were able to go ahead and do that in our sleep. We said, you know what? Within this domain of wealth, we can actually expand even more. And so now we went ahead and expanded. We said, you know what? It's not just health coaches. It's not just personal trainers. We can actually go ahead and help anyone. And we can help people in general learn how to be able to start a remote wellness practice. And then now we're able to go ahead and grow that to $10 million a year plus, right? And so you can see here, if we had been in the very beginning of this entire process and somebody had asked us, hey, do you think that you will be able to have the skills to be able to do this? Of course not. When we were first getting started out, we didn't know what the heck anything was in the domain of wealth, right? We ourselves were struggling with wealth when we first started, but we did know that we had the skills related to health. And so that's where we started. We started off with health. And then as we went ahead and focused on health, then guess what? Our wealth started to grow. And then we were able to go ahead and make that transition into wealth from there. And so this is such an important concept to be able to understand as a beginner, as you're starting to go ahead and get into that process. And as you go ahead and start to launch your remote wellness practice, even though this concept of niching may not be applicable 100% to you right now at this exact moment, we're planting these seeds and introducing you to these concepts so that way you can go ahead and understand them in the back of your mind, right? And so like I said, with each layer that we built on its own, we were going ahead and getting better and better. We were developing more and more skills, right? Skill equals knowledge times reps. And then the thing is that once you get to the point where you're doing, let's say $3 to $10 million a year, then you really start to expand your niche. You really start to go more mass market, right? Because of the fact that you now have the skills and the identity. There's two things. You got to have the skills and the identity, the character traits and the beliefs to be able to be somebody who is good at marketing, who is good at selling, who is able to build a product. So then you can actually justify being able to compete with the big guys at scale. And then all of a sudden, it's not that difficult for you to be able to do that. But as a beginner, for you to be able to go out there and say, I'm going to go ahead and compete with the big guys, and you don't even have the skills related to marketing, selling, and product, then you're going to really, really struggle. Now, again, just because you start off with a specific niche, even though that niche might just be the niche that you pick in order to quote unquote get momentum because it's the quote unquote easiest thing for you to be able to do right now, it's that specific niche that then allows you to be able to play the game of money, that allows you to be able to get the skills that will allow you to be able to scale and expand into another market in the future. And then once you learn those skills from that niche, then you level up from there, okay? Makes sense? I can't tell you how important of a topic this is. I know it's a little bit more theoretical, but that's why I went ahead and talked about the theme around having to be able to study these topics, because it's not all just about the tactics. Hey, click this, click this, click this, click this. If it was that easy, then everybody would have it. It's about the strategy and understanding the mental frameworks around this so that way you can be successful long-term, even after you've graduated from RWA. We want you to be able to learn these foundational concepts so that way when the economy changes, when the tactics change, when Web3 comes out and all of a sudden we're all living in like the metaverse or something like that, these same principles are still going to apply. And that's why it's so important for you to be able to know them. And so the bottom line of all of this, I know I'm going to be talking about niching substantially right now. And even though right now it's kind of confusing because we're telling you literally that you're not going to be worrying about niching too much right now. But again, the reason is because we're introducing you to these topics because it's not going to be long before you actually need to go ahead and apply this in your remote wellness practice. Okay. So the bottom line for all of this is that at your current level in your version 1.0 remote wellness practice launch, don't worry too much about niching for your first 3 to 5 students. Then after that, you can go ahead and think about that in the future. Okay. Now, before we close out this topic around niching, I want to go ahead and really hit it home here and talk to you about why niching is helpful so that when you get there, you understand more of the concept and why it's so important. Okay. And the reason why niching is so valuable and helpful is because of the fact that when you are actually niched down and talking to a specific customer avatar, everything that you say and everything that you provide is just so much more valuable to the person that you are speaking to. Let me go ahead and explain explain to you a little bit more, okay? Reason number one, the riches and value are in the niches. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Is that you can literally charge 100x more for the exact same product and provide 100x more value when you actually niche. And I'm gonna go ahead and walk you through a really quick example that's gonna be extremely beneficial for you, okay? Let's say, for example, that your product is just a generic program, a generic course on stress management, okay? Now, unless you are a massive influencer, you have some unique story, you have a large following, you're really good at, let's say, marketing, sales, and product, it's very unlikely that you're gonna be able to get traction selling just yet another course on just, stress management, right? And so in that case, you're really only gonna be able to sell that program for, let's say, maybe what, 19 bucks? Yeah, maybe, right? But then here's where we can go ahead and start to unleash the power of niching to your product. Let's say, for example, we now took that generic stress management program and we said, you know what, this is going to be a program that is now specifically for physicians, right? Now, all of a sudden, what's going to happen is that that same program is now for a specific type of person, and we can actually tie it to exactly what the outcome is going to look like for that specific person. And so as a result, it's going to be worth more for that specific market. And so now we can price it, instead of at $19, we can price it at maybe $99. And then here's the thing. What happens if we go ahead and niche it down to another level, right? We can use the exact same concept and say, what if we went ahead and had our stress management program be for, let's say, physicians, but specifically for emergency room surgeons, right? Because we know that they probably struggle with a lot of stress. And so now we can go ahead and make it hyper targeted. And not only that, but we can also go ahead and make it hyper targeted to a niche that actually has more money so they can afford it more. And we're tying it to a specific problem that we know that they have, which is being able to regulate their stress and be able to disconnect and have work-life balance, work-life integration, XYZ, right? And so now what was a $19 program that became a $99 program is now maybe a $499 program, right? And then on top of that, we could even say, you know what, let's niche down even more. It's going to be a stress management program for, let's say, maybe emergency room surgeons who now have, because of their stress, marriage problems. And now all of a sudden it's tied to an outcome that is probably relevant within their specific target market. And now we can go ahead and increase the price to, let's say, $19.97, right? And so all of a sudden, if you were an emergency room surgeon with marriage problems, you'd think, man, this product is made exactly for me. And you would happily fork over $1,000, $2,000 for a stress management program that would help you achieve your goal and your transformation. And the crazy thing about this entire process of niching, of market selection, and all this kind of stuff is that the actual pieces of the program that you had may not actually be any different than the generic $19 program, but because of the fact that it was applied to a specific customer avatar situation, because the marketing and the sales messages were speaking directly to that specific avatar, are speaking directly to stress management program for emergency room surgeons with marriage problems, right? All of a sudden, the customer avatar, right, the emergency room surgeons with marriage problems, they find it so much more compelling, and they're able to get more value from the actual solution of the problem. We can actually tailor everything to that specific niche. And again, this is the end result that we're looking to get to when we're looking to get to $10,000 a month consistently, is that we want to be able to become the person who services this type of person or solves this type of problem, right? We want to be able to become the person who says, you know, I solve this type of problem for this type of person in this unique counterintuitive way that goes ahead and reverses their deepest fear. And so that really is kind of the synopsis and the summary of what it is that we're doing here with reason number one and why niching is so helpful, right? Another example of this, if you look at the power of being able to niche down, is that let's say, for example, you have a generic weight loss program that's maybe 19 bucks, but what if it was a health program that was designed and marketed specifically to shift nurses, right? That's the niche. And then all of a sudden that same program can now be sold for $2,000, even though the core of the program is probably the same, right? At the end of the day, weight loss programs are all about, eat less, move more. That's it, right? But shift nurses, that specific niche, would see it more valuable because it's specifically for them. It's specific to their lifestyle. It's specific to their struggles. It's specific to their routine. It's specific to their schedule. And so what does that mean? It means that the market matters, the niche matters, and you can sell the same product for 100x the price just based on the market that you actually sell to. And all of this works because of the fact that you are able to articulate to the market their specific situation and their problems in a way that makes them think, man, if this person is so good at articulating the problems that I specifically have, let's say, for example, as a shift nurse, right? You're able to talk to the problems that they specifically have, then it is automatically believed, the shift nurses are automatically going to believe that if this person, if this organization, if this product is able to go ahead and articulate to me my problems better than I can articulate them myself, then by default, that must also mean that the product that they have created is also so much better than everybody else in the market because it's designed specifically for me. And so that's why you're able to position yourself as an expert to the problem that you solve, and they will justify the price that they're having to pay because it's made specifically for them. I hope this is making sense. This is very, very, very important to understand. There's a couple other reasons why niching is important. I'm not going to go ahead and dive too much into that, but really number two is about standing out, right? There are over 300 million people in the United States alone, never mind including Canada in there as well, right? Who need help with their wellness and with their life. Well, what makes you stand out, right? Why should people work with you specifically? All of us have the basic meals around what it is that we're doing, but it's up to you to be able to go ahead and provide your own spice to it, because if you try to add our spice to your meal, it's not going to work. You got to be able to bring your own spice to that meal, because that is what's going to help you stand out from the crowd. And then reason number three on here is clarity and conviction. Again, I'm not going to go ahead and go into it too much, but there's a reason why you might be helping this specific group of people, and you want to go ahead and highlight that reason. For example, maybe you help moms. I help moms finally have energy to keep up with their kids and still enjoy XYZ, right? Because the needs of moms might be different than other people. Maybe you help Latinos and Latinas, right? Maybe the fact that you're doing that is because their specific food choices are different than the average American diet. Maybe you help Indian men. I guarantee you that if you go to an Indian man and you say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and help you get fit while still being able to enjoy things like biryani, samosas, and naan, well, guess what? Other people aren't going to understand that, but people who are maybe Indian are going to say, dang, I love biryani, right? I want to be able to go ahead and get fit while still enjoying biryani. And all of a sudden, you now have that connection that is so different than the rest of the market because of the ethnic food that exists, right? Maybe Arab women, they really love maybe, let's say, falafel, kanafa, and baklava. Of course, I'm really generalizing here, but I'm just going ahead and letting you know that when you speak in the language of your niche, it makes all the difference to them. Maybe your program goes ahead and helps doctors and physicians. And because you're a physician, you know what the schedule of physicians is like. You know their struggles, right? You have an advantage to stand out in the market because somebody else cannot speak in the language of the physicians and the struggles that they actually have, right? I've never been a physician. I can't speak in that language, but somebody who has been can speak to that niche in a way that nobody else can. And that becomes your strategic advantage within the marketplace. And so these are all very important strategic understandings to have in the back of your mind. But again, remember, that is only applicable when you're trying to go ahead and get up to $10,000 a month consistently. In the beginning, when you're trying to build your confidence, when you're going ahead and building that certainty, you're building your conviction, you're getting in the reps, it's okay. Hey, work with everyone. But in the back of your mind, these are the things that you are thinking about. So that way, once it's time for you to be able to go ahead and have a consistent income, for you to have a consistent customer avatar, it's so much easier to design a product around a consistent outcome because you're having the same types of people who are coming into the actual program, okay? And so those are the two very important points that we want to go ahead and talk about. Number one, which was when to niche, and then number two, why niching is helpful, okay? Now, after that, that really concludes the first major topic that we wanted to go ahead and talk about inside of this training, which was number one, niching. And now the second major topic that we're going to go ahead and talk about right now is pricing and how that applies to your program. So let's go ahead and hop right into it now and talk about pricing. So inside of this section, we're going to go ahead and break down all of the major options to how you can actually go ahead and price your program in order to get started with your version 1.0 remote wellness practice launch. Now, again, this is the theme that you're going to see, that these are all topics that we're going to go much more in depth in when we get into the income and the business training. However, we are going to go ahead and lightly touch on the background of these topics as well as breaking down the options for pricing for you. Okay, so a couple quick points that we're going to go ahead and talk about in terms of the importance of pricing and how it actually works is that in order for you to be able to understand pricing, you also need to understand its brother or sister, which is value, okay? And it's very important to be able to understand that because as Warren Buffett said, price is what you pay, and value is what you get. And so we've talked about this in other trainings as well, and we've touched on it, is that the problem that you solve is the value that you're able to deliver, right? And again, I've said this many times before, is that you're doing that in exchange for another form of value, which is money. And so you're giving value in exchange for what? For value. And so the problem that you solve is the value that you are delivering, and then what you charge, aka your price for that value that you deliver, is a percentage, is a piece of that value, right? You still have a little bit more on here, so that way the customer feels that they actually got more value than what it is that they paid for. And so this is how the correlation and the connection between price and value actually works, okay? And it doesn't just stop there. There's really a big relationship between the two, because the reason why anyone buys anything is for them to be able to get a deal, okay? And so the more that they believe that what they are getting, aka the value, is worth more than what they are exchanging for that value, aka the price, that is when they're going to purchase. The moment that the value that they receive dips below what it is that they are paying, they're going to stop buying from you. And the opposite of that is at the moment that the value goes above the price that they are paying, that is the point where they're going to actually go ahead and purchase. And so the main thing that you want to keep in mind when you're going ahead and pricing your program is to always price based off of the value. And so we talked about this in a previous training. It's not about how many hours it takes from you. It's not about any of that. It's all about the value that the other party, that the consumer, is receiving, even if it costs you nothing, even if it costs you almost free in order to be able to do that. Now, initially, when somebody hears that, they think, isn't that unethical? But here's the truth. That is how business is made. Business is the arbitrage between two things. Could you go out and pick the fruits and the berries and all of that kind of stuff yourself? Or is it easier for you to be able to go to Walmart and the grocery store that's already gone ahead and done all of that for you? Of course, they're adding value to that. Now, independent of how much it costs them, that's the business's problem to figure out how they can lower their cost and how to be able to figure out how to lower all of that. But in terms of the value that you're receiving, that is why you go ahead and purchase from them instead of going out and doing it yourself, okay? And then the other important thing to understand about value and price is that not all value, quote unquote, is created equal, because how you communicate that value also matters, okay? They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, it's the same thing with value, right? Value is in the eye of the beholder. What is worthless to one person might be very important to someone else. And so this is why marketing and niching is so important as a field of study in the game of money and business, because what marketing does, marketing and copywriting, is what allows you to be able to communicate, right? The value stack is what allows you to be able to communicate in a way that the perceived value goes up. If you remember back to the TCK training, right, how we did the value stack, the value of what it is that you are getting and receiving went up as a result of how it was communicated. And so even though, quote unquote, the value is the same, right, the end result was the same of what you were receiving, how it was communicated mattered, number one. And then number two is who you are communicating to. And this is where the niche comes in place, right? If somebody's not looking to have an online income, maybe that entire value stack for TCK is completely worthless. They're like, okay, well, none of this actually matters to me, no matter how well you actually communicate it. So it's two pieces. It's how you communicate it, and it's who you communicate it to. And all of that is what contributes to the perceived value of what it is that you are offering. And then that is in juxtaposition, and that is in comparison to the price that you are charging. So that is how you go ahead and think about pricing and value and how all of it comes together. In addition to that, in addition to the relationship between price and value, there's also a relationship to price and commitment, to price and the consumer taking things more seriously, to price and perceived value, right? Have you ever tried to help out a friend or a family member only to have them blow off or not value what it is that you were saying or doing for them, right? And so having been in the education and service industry for over 10 years now, we have experienced this firsthand, right? We have seen students who have come into our program and paid over $5,000 in order to have that transformation, and they have their entire life transformed. And then there are other friends and family who might have received the program at a discount or even free, and they never even opened that exact program. Why is that? And this is going to be a belief that has served us for a very long time, and I would urge you to go ahead and adopt this for yourself, is that those who pay attention. Those who pay more attention. Now, a common misunderstanding of this belief is that people assume that pay means money, that if you don't actually pay for something with physical money, that is the reason why you might not pay attention. No, pay also requires for you, let's say, for example, you have to sacrifice time time in order to be there, right? If you actually sacrifice that, then you're going to pay attention, right? And so all of that is connected together. The more you charge, aka the price, right, is the typical way that you pay for stuff. The more you charge the price, the more attention your customers are going to pay and the more premium that they assume your product actually is. This is what is referred to in the game of business and money as the virtuous versus the vicious cycle of price. The more your price goes up, the better experience your customers have and the better experience your business has. The emotional investment, the perceived value, the results, the demandingness, and the revenue for fulfillment per customer goes up as a result of your price going up, right? Even if you don't change anything else, just by increasing your price, it has that big of an impact. And then on the business level, your profit goes up, your perceived value of yourself goes up, your perception of your sales, your service levels, your sales team's conviction, your team's conviction, all goes up when your price goes up, right? And then conversely, the vicious cycle of price is that when all of that goes down, all of these things go down as well. And so that is why there is a relationship between price, value, commitment, and every aspect of your business, your transformation program, and overall your remote wellness practice, okay? And just to prove this concept of perceived value and how it applies to price is that there was a study that was done that was actually based off of the consumer's rating of different types of wine, okay? They had like a low-priced wine and a medium-priced wine and an expensive-priced wine. And when the participants rated the wines with the price tags showing, they always rated the most expensive wine as being the best tasting, and then the second one was the medium priced one, and then the lowest one was the most cheap tasting one. And then when they flipped it, they gave them the exact same wines again, but without the prices showing. In fact, what ended up happening was that the low priced wine, the cheap tasting wine, came out on top. And so what that means is that just by raising your prices, you can directly enhance the value that you are providing because the people assume that it has to be better because the price is higher. And so higher price equals higher value, literally. And that is very interesting to think about. And this is going to be especially important for you as you start to scale your company, as you start to scale your transformation program, as you really start to get into the game of money and business. These are all very important foundational understandings to have, so that way you understand the connection between all of these factors and variables when you're out there going ahead and growing your impact, your income, as well as making sure that you are helping people along the way. So then if that is the impact of price and why increasing your prices is a good thing, the question that many beginners then have is like, okay, well, what really stops me from being able to charge high prices? And the answer to that question is your ability to deliver the result, aka how good your product is, as well as number two, your conviction and belief around your ability to deliver the result, aka your product, right? Your own conviction and belief that what it is that you are actually offering is worth that much. And the beautiful thing about this is that this is something that you can actually work on, right? This is why one person can say, yes, the cost of the transformation program is going to be $4,800 without even blinking, versus another person for the exact same product, maybe they say, yeah, but the cost of the transformation is going to be $480. Like, I know it's a lot. I'm sorry. Right? You see how the difference between it comes down to the conviction and the belief, right? Your product must deliver on the promise. That's what we've talked about before. When it comes to business, people only care about one thing, which is transformation and results. And so here is the key, is that over time, you need to work on your conviction around your ability to deliver the result, right? And that's going to happen through skill equals knowledge times reps. The more reps that you get of this, you're going to be able to become so confident in your delivery, in your product, because you've done it so many times that you know that this person who comes in, they are absolutely going to succeed. It's not something that you have to trick yourself with. I had a mentor once tell me that confidence is for children, certainty is for grown adults, is because of the fact that certainty is when you know for a fact that it's going to happen and you don't have to convince yourself of it. You are just narrating what has happened 1,000 times before. Every time you go out into your kitchen and you turn on the faucet, do you have confidence that water is going to come out, or do you have certainty? The reason you have certainty is, of course, there's a 0.00001% chance that water doesn't come out, right? But 99.99999% of the chance, the certainty that you have is that it is going to happen because you're just narrating the history that has happened 1,000 times before. And so when it gets to that point with your product and you've seen it happen over and over and over and over again, it is hard not to have conviction and it is hard not to have certainty around your product because you have so much evidence contrary to any self-doubt that might actually exist. And so experience is what gives you that conviction. The skill equals knowledge times reps, that you know that when you are asking from so much as an investment from your student, from your customer, from your client, from someone that you so deeply believe that your product is the solution to their problem, because when you look at yourself in the mirror at night when you're all alone, your conviction remains unshakable. This is so absolutely important. It's a foundational business principle, and that's why we're talking about it and introducing it to you as you go ahead and get into your remote wellness version 1.0 launch. It's going to be absolutely important for you to understand this, and of course we're going to have more and more trainings and worksheets around all of this. Okay, now after hearing all of that, you might be in your version 1.0 launch and thinking to yourself, whoa, wait a second. That standard, that caliber is so much higher than where I am right now. I'm not even sure if I'm delivering the value that I'm supposed to be delivering. Well, number one, that's something that you can work on. Go back and go through and have your own personal transformation, have your own wins. If you have not yet used health and transformation and the becoming process and the becoming journal in order to facilitate your own transformation for you to be able to see, recognize, and realize how valuable what it is that you are offering to somebody, for them to be able to bridge the gap between knowing and doing, for them to be able to have somebody that's accountable to them. The reason why they haven't been successful in the past is because they haven't yet found somebody who could hold them accountable to actually doing the things that they needed to do, that they know they should be doing. If you don't yet have that conviction, then you need to go back and work on that, because it's going to be 100 times more difficult for you to do anything else. Because if you don't have conviction around what it is that you are providing as a solution, nobody else is going to believe you around that. Okay, so that's very important. Now, if you're not there yet, don't worry, this is going to be additionally a topic that we get more into in the future. And because of the fact that it's so important to understand these concepts around price and value and have conviction in your product, and this is absolutely some of the foundational topics that online business owners and entrepreneurs who are making $300,000 a year plus, they absolutely understand them the same way that a doctor might understand anatomy and pharmacology and all those kinds of things. This is absolutely one of those very important topics. Okay, so that is the introduction of what pricing is and the foundations of pricing and the relationship between pricing and value. What we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to go ahead and talk about the major pricing options that are going to be the big things that you're going to be using to price your version 1.0 of your remote wellness practice launch. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and walk through those major options. So that way, when you're first getting started, which is what you're doing right now, okay, when you're first getting started, what are the pricing options that you might consider in terms of pricing your transformation program? And the reason why we're going to talk about them in the way that we're going to talk about them right now is because the main goal that you want to keep in mind throughout this entire process is the goal right now is to just get momentum. Okay, you want to get as many test and practice students and clients as possible, regardless of if they are paid or not. Remember, the goal is to get you into momentum, period. We got to get that car moving, because if you're sitting around, if you're not coaching, if you're not helping somebody with their remote wellness, if you're not helping somebody with their health, if you're not helping somebody with the becoming process, if you're not doing that, then you're going to get in your head. And the reason for that is because action alleviates anxiety. Action cures anxiety. Action breeds clarity, okay? It's only in the pursuit are you going to find the answers. The reason why beginners struggle is because they're sitting at the starting line wondering how and trying to figure out all of the action steps that are going to happen for the history of time in order for it to make sense for them to take the first step. That's not going to happen. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to talk about the pricing options that are going to allow you to get into momentum, so that way you can start getting action under your belt and then start to improve and have version 1.2 and version 1.3 and version 2.0 from there. And so the three major options that we're going to go ahead and dive into right now is option number one is what we call the transformation for charity project. Option number two is a full price paid customer. And then option number three is the LBOs and drop down. So let's go ahead and talk about that right now. Option number one is transformation for charity project. Okay, so this is the first great pricing option when getting started. If you're still unsure and uneasy about charging money for your program, you don't yet have that conviction and that certainty, you haven't yet gotten enough reps, what's going to allow you to do is going to allow you to get momentum and practice while also having others still pay attention to what it is that you are doing. How does this work? What you're going to do is you're still going to charge $500, $1,000, $1,200 for your program. However, instead of your client, your student giving you that money, money, what you're going to do is you're going to have them donate it to a charity of their choice in exchange for working with you in your transformation program. That way they value it, they value the program because those who pay attention, and they get that tax write-off, okay? So they feel good that they're doing it for charity, you feel good that you're helping them as well, and you're getting experience. And then on top of that, and this is huge, is that when you actually launch, quote unquote, this project, right? The reason you call it a project is because you're going ahead and making it clear, like, hey, we're going to go ahead and make a big deal out of this. You want to go ahead and spread the word. You want to have your friends and family spread the word, like, hey, this is something that you're actually doing. You know how like on social media, you see those people who are like, hey, it's my birthday, I want to donate to this cause, or hey, there's like a marathon run that you can do and you can support this cause or whatever. And so what's going to happen is that you're really spreading the word because you're saying, you know what, this is something awesome that we're doing for the community for the sake of charity. And so if you really properly do this and you lean into it, then it is going to go semi-viral within your community because of the fact that you're doing it for charity. Now, in terms of the logistics, all you got to do is really have your student or your client donate that and send a screenshot to you so that way it's verified. And then also you're going to go ahead and get permission from them in order to use their testimonial for later, as well as getting a referral from them, okay? And then after the Transformation for Charity project is over, whenever that is, once you get your first 3 customers, your first 5 customers, whatever that might be, it's going to go ahead and give you a bunch of confidence. You're going to have some awesome case studies and testimonials, and then you can transition to paid and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do this full time now. Are you comfortable paying me the same amount that you were paying for charity, but this time you're going to pay it to me directly in order to fund my new venture? And so what's going to happen is you're going to have a percentage of those people that you were working with who are going to continue and pay and stay with you. And guess what? You now have an online income, and then you can ask for referrals, XYZ. Now, an important note on this is that if people don't want to work with you and are not willing to work with you instead of paying the charity, what this does is it actually gives you a lot of valuable insight. You don't want to go ahead and get all sad and go boo-hoo and I'm depressed because people don't like me. No, you want to make sure that you are focusing on the things that actually matter. And what the thing that matters here is that it gives you insight that the value that you are providing, remember, this is why we talked about the foundations, right? You always have to think about value. If somebody does not want to be able to pay the price that you are asking, then it always has to do with value. The reason why you know that, even if somebody doesn't have money, is that if you went to somebody and told them, hey, this is a $1 million house, I'm going to be able to give it to you for $20,000, even if they didn't have $20,000, they're going to be able to go out and find $20,000, right? If you increase the value even more, you say, hey, this is a $10 million house, right? You're going to be able to get it for $20,000. Well, guess what? They're going to go out there and be resourceful because they know the value that they are getting. And so if people don't want to continue working with you, then you got to ask yourself a productive question, which is, hey, why is it that the value that I'm providing is not there, number one? Or number two, I'm not communicating this in a way that is showing its value, number two. Or number three, my own conviction and my belief around this is not so strong that I believe that it is valuable, and that's why others don't believe it either, okay? And so all of that is a learning experience for you to be able to go ahead and collect data and improve from there, okay? So that is option number one for pricing for your version 1.0 remote wellness practice launch, which is the Transformation for Charity project. And you're actually going to go ahead and see this reflected in the strategy session script. So this is actually one of the options that you could have practiced when you were doing your strategy session practice call, in terms of if you have a practice student, if you're going to go ahead and do it for the purposes of charity. All of that is something that you can go ahead and put in to the actual strategy session script. So if you now have a better understanding of this entire option, you can go in and reword what it is that you are talking about here in terms of the practice student portion of things. Okay, so that is 100% possible, and you can absolutely go ahead and do that. Now, after that, what we're going to go ahead and now talk about is option number 2, which is a full price paid student, a full price paid customer. Okay, so any RWA student who has the confidence at this point just gets how this entire process works, right? Maybe they have a background in it. Maybe they went ahead and just really had a good realization throughout this entire process of, okay, you know what? I have a transformation program. I hold a student accountable. I educate them on the skills and tools that they need in order to be successful in their transformation, and all of the other learnings that you have had inside of the certification process. Then this option is going to be for that RWA student. This is where you can go in and rip the band-aid off and go directly to pricing your program how you would normally do so. Okay, so you can go ahead and start off at $1,200. You can go ahead and then move up to $2,400. You can even get up to $3,600 depending on where your conviction and your belief is, because here's the big thing about this, is that a lot of the pricing aspect of things has to do with your belief and your conviction. If you can't even say $3,600, $3,600 without stuttering, without getting sweaty, then it's going to be difficult for you to be able to price at that, especially when you're getting started. And so the reason why we don't teach beginners when they're first getting started to go out there and just rip the Band-Aid off and do $3,600 programs is because of the fact that it's going to become an obstacle. And remember, the biggest thing we're focusing on right now is momentum, right? Action alleviates anxiety. And so you got to pick a price point. If you're going to go ahead and have paid students, you got to pick a price point, and it's okay to start off low if that's what it is, in order for you to be able to get momentum. Okay. Now, typically on the one-on-one model, that is kind of the top end in terms of 3,600, 4,800. As you really start to build your expertise and as you start to build your value, you can even get up to, let's say, 5,800. Even, I mean, obviously for one-on-one, for certain people in the world, they charge like $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 for one-on-one sessions, right? Obviously that is possible. I'm not saying that that's, we're not going against that right now, but what we're saying is that typically at the level that we're talking about right now, typically 3,600 is going to be kind of the top end. And then as you move into more of a hybrid model, we even have students who are at 4,800, 5,800 for the transformation programs, specifically in health. That's what you call B2C non-ROI based, right? But then when you go ahead and go into like B2C ROI based, kind of like helping people make money online and that kind of stuff, there's a little bit of a different price range for that. However, this is absolutely doable in terms of $1,200, $2,400, $3,600 packages. Absolutely doable. Okay. And so if you decide to do this option, you just always have to make sure that you keep in mind that you are checking yourself to always remember that in terms of pricing, you are not charging per hour or per session. You are always pricing based on the value that the person is receiving from their transformation. This is very important. A lot of beginners, for some reason, get into their head and they're like, okay, if I'm going to charge $1,200, it's going to be a 12-week program. That means like it's per week is $100 a week. No, that's not how it works. It's based off of the transformation. And you need to make sure that you have that straight in your head so that if that comes up as an obstacle for somebody that you are talking to as an objection and they start to break it down that way, it's like, hey, at the end of the day, you can give them the doctor example, the dentist example, right? It's like, hey, a dentist takes 10 minutes and they might charge $1,000. Does that mean that they should go ahead and spend 2 hours taking out your tooth because of the fact that it's going to go ahead and take longer? Of course not, right? It's the value. And so it's not what you're paying us as the remote wellness practice, as your health coach. It's not what you're paying us for the time. It's more so what you are paying for the result. How much is the result mattering to you, right? Because at the end of the day, you're selling the future, not the feature. You're selling the vacation, not the plane flight, right? You always want to make sure you remember all of that. We've talked a lot about this in the past, so I'm not going to repeat it here. You want to keep your conviction high because what it is that you are offering is that valuable and life transforming for your students. And if you don't firmly believe that enough yet, that means that you just haven't done enough work with all of the other previous modules and all of the trainings, and you're not actually putting in the dang work to have a transformation for yourself. Because once you have a transformation with all of this understanding and these skills, then at that point, it's going to become effortless for you to be able to communicate that to somebody else and how valuable all of this is for someone else. Okay. And so that is option number 2. And then the big thing around this is that some students might have the question is like, hey, is option number 2 for me? So here's the thing. Every RWA student is going to come into this program with different backgrounds, different situations, different experiences. We talked about this all the way back in a previous module when we talked about adult learning versus childhood learning, right? And so with adult learning, because you are coming into this with a different background than every other student, it's different and the different options are going to be important for you, right? Versus with childhood learning, you know that like if you're going to go ahead and talk about a topic, the chances of the child or the kids in the classroom having experienced that in the past is very low. And so as a result, you're kind of creating the curriculum around that differently. So the reason why we have this structured in the way that we do in an adult learning environment is because of the fact that we recognize that you have different experiences. You might have a background in sales. You might have a background in health. You might have a background in all of these different places that are going to contribute to this career change that you are making and being able to go ahead and have this click for you, right? We've talked about this in the past as well. And so that is going to happen. And then also on top of that, some students are going to come into this program with maybe they have an audience already. Maybe they already have a lot of people that they interact with, right? Maybe they already have people who are willing to support them by becoming a full pay student, right? And so in that case, they're going to be able to lean on that. However, Just because you may not have that, just because you may be coming in fresh, does not mean that you are at a disadvantage. Just because you might not have the market or the audience or all that kind of stuff, that you can't go out there and just do a full pay client off the bat, does not mean that you are at a disadvantage. It just means that you have different experiences that you are contributing to this entire career change that you are bringing about. And don't worry, that was exactly our situation as well. And that's exactly what it is that we're going to be touching base on when we talk about more in the income and business training on how to be able to start building that for yourself. Because a quote that I really like is that the best day to plant a tree was yesterday, and the second best day is right now. And so it's not healthy and it's not really productive to beat yourself up about all of this. Instead, you can just go ahead and get busy putting in the work and then building yourself from there. Okay, so that is option number 2. Of course, you are going to see this reflected in the strategy session script as well. Option number 2, in terms of a paid student, you can go ahead and use that option if that is the one that is most applicable for you. And then option number 3 is what we call LBOs and drop downs. So an LBO stands for a low barrier offer. It's basically something that you give on the front end as a small thing in order to get a prospect through the door, so that way they become a customer, and then that way you're working towards getting them into a bigger program or a different package later on. Because what it does is it builds that trust and that conviction that the student or the prospect and the customer now is internal, right? Now they believe all of what it is that you were telling them, and now it's easier for them to be able to get on a continuity package in the back end and all this kind of stuff. If none of those terms mean anything to you, don't worry about it. All this is a little bit more advanced business and income game language. But the big thing is that you want to understand what this looks like visually, is that you might have a front end product or a front end package, right? And that might be an LBO to get somebody through the door. And then once they go through that, after maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, after they consume that product, you then go ahead and have a back end product in order to go ahead and have a longer lifetime value of the customer. And so this is what option number 3 looks like. And in fact, this LBO type of offer is exactly what we used when we first launched NutriFit Wellness back in the day. Was the 21-day transformation LBO offer, right? What we did is we used it to be able to get clients off of paid ads who kind of were not trusting of us, right? We wanted to build a relationship with them, and we wanted them to be able to continue with us afterwards. And so our offer was $299 for 21 days, and it included a kickoff call, which was coaching call number 1, right? It included a steps coaching call, which was helping them get to walking over 7,500 steps a day, which by itself was life-changing for so many people. It included food portions, right? Coaching call in terms of having them monitor their food, start getting some results initially. You could even throw in like a sleep coaching call in here if you want to kind of mix it up half-half, because you know that it's going to be a game changer for people, as well as daily accountability to build that relationship to make sure that they actually did all the stuff that they were learning in the coaching calls. And so just those ingredients by themselves were enough to be life-changing for clients that were coming through the doors in the first 3 weeks, the first 21 days. And then on the last day of their 21-day transformation, we would ask them, hey, do you want to continue for the 6-month program, for the 3-month program, whatever it might be? And we would have so many clients that would agree to that, right? And many of them would even offer to pay in full, because we had a paid in full discount, right? It's like, hey, if you pay the entire 3 months or 6 months up front, then you're going to get a discount off of that. So many of them would do that because now the trust and the relationship had been built, versus if we offered them, hey, a $5,000 program and you just met me on the internet, it's a little bit strange, right? And so this is the reason why it works, is because the first time they got introduced with us on paid ads, we were strangers and they didn't know if we were legit or not. And so the $299 seemed like an okay amount to just go ahead and say, you know what, even if I lost this, it's worth it for me to see if this is legit. So it's a low barrier in order to get started. And so this is another option that you could potentially have in your tool belt, either to offer that as a front end product, or let's say, for example, you decide, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and pitch the bigger package. And then at the end of the call, at the end of the strategy session, what happens is that the person is kind of like on the fence, they're not sure. They're like, that's a lot of money. You're like, you know what, how about we do this? And then you could use it as a drop down. And so, you know what, instead of going after the big package, how about we just start off with 3 weeks and see how that works? And then you can kind of go from there, right? So that is another big option that is available for you, especially as you go ahead and do your version 1.0 launch. And then in addition to that, in addition to this being an LBO for the customer, this can also be an LBO, a beginner LBO offer for you as well, right? You can actually use this for yourself because of the fact that you know that even if you just got $1 from a customer, from somebody that you didn't know, or maybe somebody who was in your network, network, you know that this would be a big deal because it would prove to yourself that you could actually do this, right? And so even if you decided to just coach somebody for, let's say, $10 per week for 3 weeks or something like that, right? And it gave you the practice in order to collect the cash, send the invoice, put the coaching calls done, the calendars, all that kind of stuff. So this could be a different type of LBO offer, but the low barrier, yes, it's kind of for the customer, but more so it's for you to feel confidence charging someone something, and that would be a major win for you, right? And so this is another option that you have in your tool belt as a beginner when getting started in order to make sure that you're building your confidence and you're getting your head out of overthinking and you're not stuck with analysis paralysis. And so these are kind of option number 3 and how an LBO works. And so in addition to that, are there other pricing structures and offer structures that exist? Heck yeah, there's a lot of them. In fact, learning how to be able to create an offer and price your program and price your product is actually an entire science, an entire subject in the game of money and business. And so I always ask people who are kind of frustrated with their income level and not being able to make the income that they want, as I always ask them, like, hey, how much have you studied the game of money and business? How much do you know about the subject matter within the game of money and business? Because the truth is that if you know a substantial amount about how the game of money is played, then it's impossible that you wouldn't be able to play the game as a very big player and actually make the income that you want. The only reason that people struggle in the game of money is because they don't have the skill set necessary in order to actually play the game properly. And so this is one of those skill sets when we talk about pricing. There are literally books written about pricing and value and all of these kinds of things. And we ourselves have played around with hundreds of different types of pricing in the past. And so again, this is going to be another topic. Remember that recurring theme in terms of how to increase your prices in the sales module when we talk about scaling and we talk about the game of sales and all of that as well. And so in the same way that doctors, or quite frankly, any other profession, have in their bucket of knowledge that they have to be up to date on, business owners that are actually running a proper business, not just a business that they've created as a job for themselves, right? I call those people self-jobsmen. They're not businessmen or businesswomen. They're self-jobsmen or self-jobswomen, okay? I'm talking about real business owners, entrepreneurs who, as a profession that play the game of money, they study and refresh themselves on topics like niching and market positioning and offers and pricing, okay? And so the reason I'm introducing all of this to you is to open your mind to the game that actually exists out there as you start to get closer and closer to being able to play that game, to the income and business training, okay? But overall, for right now, just keep in mind that it really doesn't matter what price you choose, because you really just want to focus right now on getting reps. You want to focus right now on getting students. You want to focus right now on getting out of your own head, and you want to focus on building your confidence and not getting stuck in the valley of despair, right? We've talked about this in the past. You do not want to get stuck here. When all of a sudden, all of the things that you were incompetent on get exposed via the knowledge that you are now learning, what ends up happening is that people realize, oh, dang, this is a lot harder than I thought it was. And that's where a lot of people fall. And unfortunately, the valley of despair is littered with those people who did not actually make it out. And so the biggest thing is we want to make sure that you are getting that knowledge, you're getting that reps, and you're consistently moving forward. So that way you don't end up like one of those bodies that is stuck in the valley of despair. And then all of a sudden you just kind of business opportunity hop, you go here and there, the grass is green on the other side, and you don't recognize that you are a victim of the fact that you are unconsciously incompetent to whatever that opportunity is. And then all of a sudden you just keep on having these bodies in the valley of despair for every business opportunity that you jump into. No, it's going to work. It's just a matter of whether or not you put in the work to make it work, period. And so this is the big pieces that we're talking about in terms of the options and pricing and offer structures. Now, one thing that you are going to notice out of all of the options is that what about coaching people for free? You're going to notice that there was no option for like, hey, I'm just going to coach people for free. It doesn't exist, right? Why? Because people who pay attention. And so the closest option that exists for quote unquote free is the Transformation for Charity project, right? That option, but even then they're going ahead and donating to charity so that way they take it seriously. Now, obviously you can go ahead and lower that amount. You can make it even more feasible. You don't necessarily have to go to $1,200 to donate to charity, $2,400 to donate to charity. But the point is that everybody is always investing in order to actually take things more seriously, okay? And so that really is the topic when we talk about pricing and we talk about how all of that works. That really is the conclusion of the two main topics, which is niching as well as pricing. So as we go ahead and close out this training, let's go ahead and really bring it all together, because as you can see, the topics of niching and market selection selection and market positioning and pricing and value and all that kind of stuff are quite deep. And there are going to be topics that you revisit over and over and over again as you grow your online income and as you become a very solid player in the game of money. However, our goal right now is to just touch and introduce on these topics for the purposes of what you need for your version 1.0 launch without you getting overwhelmed. Now, I know I've said this a gazillion and 2 times, but I'm going to make sure I go ahead and hit this again and again and again. The goal is for you to stay in momentum and keep moving, because the number one issue with beginners when they are getting started is analysis paralysis, overthinking, majoring in the minors, making everything else important that is not important, okay? And so this is why we keep repeating, don't major in the minors, keep the main thing. Do not put on the failure uniform. Don't put all of your energy and focus on getting distracted and procrastinating and all this kind of stuff. If you have time to think about the how, if you have all of this time to overanalyze, it's a good indication that you are not busy enough with action, okay? Remember, action alleviates anxiety. Action breeds clarity, okay? And so only in the pursuit are you going to find the answers, and you need to make sure that you are busying yourself with massive action in the beginning in order to get rocking and rolling, okay? But especially in the beginning, in order to get that car actually moving, right? It's kind of like moving a train or moving a very big truck or moving a very big car. It takes a massive amount of action in order to get it to move even a little bit. And then once it starts to move a little bit, you start getting that momentum and it builds on top of each other. And before you know it, you're going to start to be able to get that momentum and ride that wave of momentum, okay? And so even though we are here to help, even though we are here to go ahead and guide you, at the end of the day, it is up to you because you are responsible for your results. We can only ever provide the guidance, the tools, the knowledge, the education, the coaching. That's what we can provide, right? But it's going to be up to you to be able to put in the dang work and mold your identity to become the person who can effortlessly achieve your desired reality, right? You are going to have to put in the dang work in order to become someone who can, over time, with the right guidance and with the right momentum, you can keep going and learn all of the principles that you need, all of the skills that you need in order to be able to create $100,000, $1 million, $10 million in income when it comes to understanding product, when it comes to understanding sales, when it comes to understanding marketing, okay? And so I would urge you, I would encourage you. I know I've been a little bit more tough. I know I've been a little bit more blunt throughout this training, but it's so absolutely critical. And the reason we're doing that is because we know the closer we get to action time, the closer we get to actually going out there and talking to strangers or talking to people around you, all that kind of stuff. That's where beginners fall. And so I would urge you, don't stop. Keep pushing through. As long as you are relentless in your pursuit of learning, it doesn't matter if you fail, right? It's because of the fact that we've been trained as workers in the traditional education system in which failure has been seen as bad, right? If you get a F on your test, it's like, oh, that's terrible. You can't even redo it. But that's not how life works. And so I promise you, as long as you keep on getting back up, you will one day make it. And that's absolutely what you need to remember throughout this entire process, okay? And so as we close out this training, I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about your engagement questions, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about your action steps as well. But regardless, you always want to keep what it is that we've talked about inside of this training in your mind because it's so absolutely critical. So let's go ahead and talk about your engagement questions for this specific training. There are going to be 4 of them. Number 1 is going to be, what are your thoughts on this training? What did you like and enjoy about this training? Takeaways, ahas, all that kind of stuff, right? You can go ahead and let us know about that. And then these are the 2 that are going to be absolutely required. Number 2, what niche do you have in the back of your mind that you'd like to work with in the short term? And then what niche do you have in the back of your mind that you'd like to work with long term, okay? And then number 3, what pricing option do you plan on starting with for your version 1.0 remote wellness practice launch? Why have you chosen that? And then number 4, do you have any questions about anything that was discussed inside of this training? Of course, just as a reminder, make sure you actually go ahead and tag the page RWA Coaches when you are asking your question. And then if you do not get a response, make sure you go ahead and reach out to support as well. So that's just a quick reminder around that. And then in terms of action steps, pretty straightforward compared to a lot of the other action steps that we've had inside of this module. Number 1, make sure you go ahead and watch and study this training in full. That's going to be very important. Number 2, make sure you go ahead and complete the engagement questions for this training, which are the ones that we went ahead and talked about above. And then number 3, make sure you go ahead and adjust and practice your strategy session script to reflect the pricing option that you went ahead and chose as a result of this training. Okay, that's going to be very important because very soon we're going to go ahead and use that pricing option. We're going to go ahead and use our strategy session script for you to go out there and start getting your practice and test students. Now remember, practice and test students, those could be paid. That could be charity. That could be LBO. It doesn't matter what it is. You are going to be required to have practice and test students throughout this process. And if you want to go ahead and have full pay students, by all means, go out there and launch. That's totally up to you. But it's going to be time to go ahead and take action. And this is the time where we're going ahead and putting and finalizing all of those details. So this has been the Niching and Pricing Your Program training. This is Coach Yasin checking out, and I will catch you inside of the next training.